but I wasn't mentally applying what they were teaching me. I just said, I'm checking these boxes. I'm, doing the exposure response prevention, starting with my number 1, moving up. Okay, we got to 3 today. And then I go back to the hotel and go back to my safe spots.
Yeah.
Do every ritual again. And I realized that unless I take it upon myself, nobody's going to do it for me. Nobody's able to pull you out of that pit. They can help you, but ultimately you need to be the one to kind of pull up your bootstraps and say, my life needs to improve, and I'm in control of that.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability in fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to this episode of Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford, and today I have an amazing guest with me today, Jana Hahn. Jana, with a Bachelor's of Science degree from Liberty University in Interdisciplinary Studies, a specialty in psychology, communications, and theater arts, Jana is passionate about utilizing an individual's unique story to provide peace of mind about OCD. From her personal experience, she advocates the message that pain has a purpose in the state of Tennessee and beyond. As a previous Walt Disney World cast member, she is pursuing performing arts in Nashville and has a current profession as a marketing director. In her free time, she is actively involved in the Miss America organization promoting mental health advocacy. Welcome, Jana. How are you?
Thank you, Reggie. I'm doing well. I'm so excited to be here with you today and get to be a part of highlighting mental health awareness with May coming up with Mental Health Awareness Month. So excited to get to talk today.
I'm excited to talk as well. And you have a fantastic story of pain to purpose and understanding how our pain can be a driver toward that purpose. And I cannot wait to dive into that. But before we get into it, I got a segment called What Comes to Mind. So You let me know. This is on the spot, just the first thing you think of, okay?
Okay.
What comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
Being vulnerable to me is being your true authentic self without putting up those walls. It's not altering anything. It's not putting almost a filter on top. It's saying this is genuine. This is real. This is no changes. This is it. And so I'm hoping to flex that vulnerability muscle today too. So I'm excited.
Let's go. I love it. What do you do to decompress or center yourself if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed?
Great question. I love to be outside, so I like to go for a walk or listen to music. A lot of times if I'm in a space where I can't do that, it's just finding a moment and, breathing, going over what I can control within myself. What am I doing that's maybe prohibiting me from having that peace or that calm and being able to recenter and find, that grounding again.
That's dope. And then lastly, what is one of your favorite childhood memories?
Favorite childhood memories? Let's see here. Oh, this is a good one. So when we were little, we used to live by this hill that went down, and when it would snow, my dad would put us in little laundry baskets, and we would sled down the hill in laundry baskets. Nice. So I have a twin sister and a younger brother, and it was the best thing ever. So that was something I will always remember and still think of it super funny and very innovative.
Yeah,
and nobody falls out, so we're good.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Ohio. So I was born in Ohio and then moved to Louisville, Kentucky area. Okay. That's where I consider kind of my hometown, but originally was Ohio, and then came here to Tennessee about 3 years ago.
Nice. Okay, so what was Louisville? That's like home of the Slugger, home of Muhammad Ali.
Kentucky Derby.
You got a lot of things going on in Louisville. That's cool.
Good place. Yeah. It's good.
What did your childhood look like? So you mentioned like it was mom, dad, siblings. Like how did y'all relate to each other, and what was your identity growing up?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I have a twin sister, so I'm 9 minutes older, Joy, by the way. 9 minutes older, and we've, grown up in the almost same direction. And my brother is 2 years younger, so not far behind us. Great family dynamic, wonderful parents, always involved in our lives, very involved within the school and the church. And in fourth grade is when I first started experiencing my OCD symptoms. And as parents who they had never experienced anything of mental health or mental health illnesses, they really didn't know what to do. And that's kind of when everything started. So then I started to show these symptoms and they thought it was a phase or something that I did for a moment. And in reality, it was just the start of the snowball.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So
And,
when you say OCD, obsessive,
Yes, obsessive compulsive disorder. So to kind of recap that, if anybody's listening, obsessive compulsive disorder is you obsess over something and you behave or create a compulsion to make that anxiety go away. So, if you touch something and you think it's dirty, you have all this anxiety and you go wash your hands, well, that behavior is your compulsion. And so you're doing this over and over and over again because you're trying to get that anxiety to go away. But in reality, your amygdala in the front of your brain is being reinforced that I have to do this every time. I have to do this every time. But in reality, that's what you shouldn't do because you're building that habit. And it's a monster. OCD is an ugly monster. So that's when it started appearing, and my parents thought about looking into medical care in regards to medication, but being so young, I was 10 years old, so they decided to, let time pass, and luckily for me, my symptoms decreased, and the family dynamic seemed to return back to normal. It did cause a lot of tension within the siblings and the parents because I was receiving focus and all that care, and, the world doesn't revolve around me. So it was a lot of stress there. But then, they decreased for a couple years after that.
Wow. And so I think OCD is one of those things that people flippantly throw out there as, I got OCD because I do something and they're organized or they're neat or, tidy. But can you explain what those symptoms were like in your life or what started to show early on?
Yeah, and those small things are very valid. Like if you touch something and you think it's dirty or you need to wash your hands or check a light switch or do something repetitively, it's normal to have anxiety, but for it to get in the way of your daily behaviors is when it becomes an issue. And that's for me when I had to, you need to go get help from professionals and go to a partial hospitalization program. And when I was at my peak of the worst symptoms and the darkest I've ever been, I think I felt as though I couldn't help it, as though I had to keep giving in to this anxiety, and then which led to depression and just coinciding of all these things. And I truly thought I lost the person that I was. So I don't know, a lot of people don't know this about the Miss America organization, but I went to treatment for OCD and anxiety. It was partial hospitalization, meaning 8 hours a day. So I'd go to sleep, go to treatment, go to sleep. And it was, I remember just laying there in the bed and just thinking, this cannot be life. I have to apply what I'm learning. And I wasn't educated prior to going to treatment. So being there really, really got me in line to say, okay, this is what my identifying OCD anxiety factors are. How can I almost respond to them in a healthy way to still achieve my dreams and still be successful and still be Jana, the one who, always wanted to make people happy, and that wasn't going to be taken away just because of anxiety and depression. So the first thing I did when I got out of treatment from Rogers Behavioral Health, which we have a facility here in Middle Tennessee, they're across the country, I competed in a local for the Miss America organization because it was a way.
At what age?
I was 20. I was 20.
Okay.
Yep. So I was 20. So I was competing, and I did it because I wanted to share my story. I was very, very secretive about it. Nobody knew. If you asked me, I would kind of brush it off. I kind of isolated myself during that time period, 2018 to 2020 area. And so I use that as a platform to share about OCD anxiety and that you're not alone.
Yeah.
That, you can still dress your best, want to wear a beautiful gown, want to present yourself well, but still be able to advocate and realize that everyone has something they're going through. Like I have a mountain, you have a mountain. They're not the same, but we can empathize. We can come together and help each other no matter what that looks like.
Wow. That's powerful. You mentioned that there was some family dynamics and tension once you started getting a lot of treatment toward your OCD. And I can only imagine having a twin too, and going through it and how that could have gotten in the way of you two. What did those family dynamics look like and how they manifest?
Yeah. So with my twin sister, I think the biggest thing that I felt between, when I was in the peak of it all and just was very confused and angry at myself, but why this was happening, and where, on the other hand, she wasn't experiencing any symptoms. And so it almost frustrated me because I thought, how is this possible?
Yeah.
We've gone through everything together. We're, in the womb together. And now it's like I'm facing this illness that I feel like is destroying my life. I don't feel like I'm myself. And so the sibling aspect was very, very hard to understand because it's often hard to understand something that's not tangible.
Yeah.
And so especially for those siblings who don't get that. And then between my parents, my mother was always with me. She went to treatment with me. She tried her best to understand. And what we didn't know was that, for example, when you are helping an individual with an OCD disorder complete that compulsion, you're enabling them. You're preventing them from getting better.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't know that. And we were doing everything we could to, in a way, survive. That's what my mom would say, because, she would bring me Lysol wipes, or she would help me do things, because if not, my world, was over. And so it took a toll on them within my parents' marriage. My dad was angry with it because he didn't understand it. Just thought, why can't you be normal? Why can't you break out of it? Just do things like this. But when that anxiety is telling you, and when you have that, that feeling, it's really impossible. Yeah. So now that we've gone down this road of learning and recovery, now they know what they did wrong and what we can do better and how we can help those around us. And I know that my mom specifically is working with moms who have children with OCD, because she didn't know what resources to reach out to when it comes to insurance coverage, what that looks like, who to talk to simply for emotional, spiritual, who knows, even financial help. And so that's a thing that was very difficult for us, but yet has become something that, like we kind of mentioned before, pain into purpose.
Yeah.
It has given so much purpose and a driving force, not only for their lives, but for mine as well, because what was the worst and held me back has now been a catalyst.
Yeah.
It's kind of been a slingshot per se.
That's dope. I love that. It's interesting to me that, because you think about nature versus nurture. And so I think there's shows about taking twins and putting them through these experiments and seeing how one responds versus the other. Have you been able to work with your sister and understand like where your anxiety and OCD came from versus why it didn't present in her or anything like that?
Yeah, great question. So we haven't looked specifically between both of us, but I do know that within, these symptoms, they occur within transitional periods. So when I was young adolescents, 10 years old, we had just moved to Louisville. So there was a big shift there, and it just, had happened for me. And then same thing, late adolescence, late 20 or early 20s, whenever I started to, was in college trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my career. I had just switched schools, and I was at a point where nothing seemed certain. Yeah. And so for me to gain that certainty, I resorted to those compulsions with contamination. Yeah. And I know, I won't speak directly for her, but I know she's had battles of her own, but they were not the same. And, mental health illnesses are genetic or due to environmental factors. So I don't know. We might have to look into that.
Yeah.
So
No, it's interesting. I
that
think
is
it's really
interesting.
cool. But
yeah,
I think it highlights too, just like people, like, cause she was making that move, and then did she go to college as well?
Yeah.
Like, so people respond differently. Brains respond differently to, it could be the same stimulus. It could be the exact same thing happening. Somebody hears a gunshot, and that gunshot is felt differently.
Right.
With 100 people, it's going to be different 100 different ways. And so I think that's really important to point out. But I'm super excited, though. You've used your platform to advocate for mental health, to tell your story, to uplift other people. What has been the most revealing thing about this journey for you as you've learned your story and been able to own it in that way?
Here comes the vulnerability muscle. So I would say that during the process of sharing my story and being able to advocate, it's realizing that I'm always going to be needing that, little details of maintaining my symptoms. Progress is never complete. You're never perfect. You always have to strive to be better and look at what you're doing negatively and build on top of that, especially with anxiety and depression and OCD and all these things, they can manifest in different areas of life. So as it has become better in one area, it starts to formulate somewhere else. And where that might sound scary, it's not as scary because I have the tools that I, didn't have before. Yeah. And I'm able to identify and also have community. I have, like, we met at the Day on the Hill for the National Alliance of Mental Illness and immediately were connected. And so it's cool to kind of meet people and start sharing and realize, oh my goodness, we have so much in common. And yet, who would have thought?
Right, definitely. And so you said you have resources, and you shared with me a notebook earlier.
Yeah.
Right
here.
From a period of time where you were working through your healing process. Do you want to highlight anything in particular in that?
Yeah. So this binder was something that I had in treatment, and during that time, to me, it was very contaminated. I could barely touch it. I would basically complete my. So when you have OCD, you create a hierarchy, and this hierarchy is based on different levels of anxiety.
Okay.
So you have your list here, if you can see it. So we have different things about, walking barefoot, touching money, touching door handles, simple things, maybe drinking from a cup without a straw. So simple task, but it was just, I was could not do it. And, you rate them. So I have them as a 5, a 6, 7, 1 being anticipating rituals the next day. So, going to bed, ruminating, insomnia, things like that.
And a 1 is the highest for you?
So 1 is the lowest and 8 was the highest.
Okay.
And so my 8 was cross-contaminating, clean and dirty. So that would mean if I touch something and then touch something else in my mind, that transfers and it just keeps on going.
Yeah.
And that
you shared a story about that before, haven't you? Where illustrate it, because you laid it out so well, of like you shake hands and just like the ripple effect of it. Can you illustrate a like real life example?
Yeah. So I oftentimes talk about, let's say I'm on my phone, I took out the trash. Well, I touched the trash can. In my mind, that's very contaminated, dirty. Who knows what's been there? X, Y, Z. Well, then I touch my phone. I touch the doorknob. Whoever touches the doorknob, then whatever they touch, maybe they touch the fridge. Well, that's contaminated too. So it's just a ripple effect of contamination, and my brain follows it. It's bizarre. I can just see it. It's like I'm wearing goggles, and it's, I touched exactly this spot on the paper, and I'd be able to avoid it. And avoidance is also a behavioral compulsion, which who would have thought?
Yeah.
So even when you think you're doing something by not touching it, you are enforcing in your mind that you shouldn't be able to interact with it due to anxiety.
Wow.
Yeah. So this was the binder I had, and honestly, I didn't recognize who I was. I would look in the mirror in the evenings and think, I'd be so mad at myself, and I would just not even put any makeup on. I put my hair in a ponytail, barely brush it, and if you know me, it's just I'm always that makes me feel good to have my hair done and makeup on and feel good, and I didn't even have the energy to make myself look like myself. I just was like, I'm getting up. This is the best I can do today. We're going to see what happens, and I'll try tomorrow to do the same. But actually, what I wanted to share was I wrote myself a letter.
Yes.
Which, because this is like the drama. So this was July of 2019. Okay. And I had written this because I thought, well, maybe one day I'll read this and I'll have come to a spot where I'm no longer feeling the way I feel.
Wow.
And it makes me emotional because I think about how dark it was. Like, I was very passive suicidal. Felt like a living nightmare to be awake, and then I'd go to sleep and I couldn't escape it still, in that cycle. And if anybody has experienced anxiety, depression, or PTSD or anything of those natures, you kind of get what that's like.
Yeah.
And so I basically, in the letter said every day so difficult, just even getting out the door. I will never be better or not see things as clean and dirty. I'm just so frustrated. I want to be normal. I know I just sit at dinner and I cry and I feel like I'm dying. This OCD has control over me, and I am fighting against the monsters that no one sees. And it seems almost unbearable to face another day. And I said, just know when you're reading this, how hard it took to get where you are now. It seems impossible, but you are destined to do the impossible things that God designed for you. And OCD is a state of mind, and you can learn how to conquer that. So steal your life back. You can do these things and keep going. And at the end, I signed it, Jana, who's dying from all this, but in the end will be okay.
Wow.
Because I truly was like, I guess, I'm hoping. I don't know, but I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So, and it just makes me laugh. But back a couple of years ago, 6 years ago now, wouldn't have thought that I'd be able to share with you even this story yet, come alongside other individuals and say, hey, you're not alone. Use that as fuel, use it as purpose, because now it's become one of my greatest strengths.
Yes.
It's one of my weaknesses, 100%, but it's a way that I can connect with people. It's a way that I can get involved with my community. It's a way that I realize that, I still need to work on things, and I'm able to share that and help others too.
It's so amazing that how do you feel reading that? Because it was so powerful to hear, especially toward the end of
I had to kind of browse it because I was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff in there. But it's to think about that spot that I was in and to see where it is now it's encouraging. And I think of those who I watched videos in those moments when I was going through the dark times, and I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. So I'm hoping that our stories and just what we're doing, people can see it, because it might not seem like you can get through it in the moment, but piece by piece. I like to say, look at that staircase, not the entire, look at the step, not the entire staircase.
Yes.
Because step by step, you'll get where you need to be. So don't rush it. It's not going to be a fast process. Just slowly keep going, keep doing your thing.
Wow. It's so interesting. So July 2019 was a period of time in my life for totally different reasons where I was in tremendous darkness. And I had just lost 2 childhood friends to murder. And then little did I know, the end of that month would end with my grandmother, who was the nurturer in my life, dying. Yeah. And at this point, it was estrangement and a lot of other losses that, were near and dear to me, that I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't even cancel meetings. I would just not show up, and just, nothing mattered during that time. And so to know that, for different reasons on a different part of the world and town or whatever, we had experiences that were darkness. And I think that highlights the point that you made earlier, that you're not alone, right? We have our unique situations and our unique circumstances, but the ways in which we feel, the ways in which some of those things manifest, we have community in that.
Right.
And so it's so reassuring to have, to know that I hate that you experienced that. I hate that you had to go through those things. But for anybody listening who may be going through their dark moment and feeling like you are alone, you are not. You are absolutely not alone. And if we, with our stories, OCD, PTSD, complex PTSD, you have community out here, and there are folks who want to help. There are resources. You talked about some resources that your parents share now, right? Around helping mothers, helping parents with kids. Can you share some of those with folks?
Yeah. So I know specifically that my mom has been working with a life coach community. So being able to walk alongside moms who have taken their children to maybe a mental health therapist, and meaning they're able to help them do the small things to control, maybe just time efficiency, or being able to be organized, and those small things can help them be stable enough to then tackle their mental diagnoses, because when you're having all these things going on, you cannot get that forward. So I know that effective functioning coaching is what that's called. Okay. And anybody can do that, but no, mainly younger children. And then specifically working with organizations like National Alliance of Mental Illness, Rogers Behavior Health. There's a mental health walk this upcoming May for the mental health of National Alliance of Mental Illness. There's too many little acronyms.
Too many acronyms.
So walk coming up with them, and then also there's an OCD walk in October that we do to raise money for the International OCD Foundation. Okay. The International OCD Foundation is also another resource. I had the opportunity to apply and become an IOCDF advocate, meaning it's a 2-year program, and we are, entrusted with being able to advocate and share the most possible ways. And so that's something I never thought would be possible, yet they are a great resource, because without them and without the help of Dr. Liz, who was part of the board at the time, I wouldn't have found treatment. It's kind of a chain reaction, but my dad had met her. She recommended Rogers to us, and that's where I went.
Yeah.
Because if not, we looked online, we called people, but everything is so also tricky to get into. It was kind of a matter of, okay, we need some referrals and things.
How
of
did
that
you
nature.
navigate the insurance side of it?
Yeah. So a lot of that fell on my parents, and I know it was a long process to get everything finalized, and I don't know the details entirely, just because at the time it was almost something I couldn't really carry, but they were able to walk alongside us and understand what that looked like, and whether it's financials or educational aspects. I know like Rogers and IOCDF are really great at explaining things and making it doable. If you're scared to attempt something because of that factor, don't. And if it's a matter of financials, know that there are organizations and grants out there that can help you do that, because I know specifically are here to help. And that's something I also didn't want to take help from anybody. I was like, I can do it by myself. And even as we were talking about earlier that, you're not alone. Someone said that to me, I would get angry. I would say, but you don't understand.
Yeah.
You do not get it. You don't know what I'm feeling, how dark it is, the feelings that are in my mind, how that I have to keep repeating them. And I would get angry, and so angry.
When did that shift for you from the anger to, okay, maybe you are being genuine?
So this is extra vulnerable. So even at the Rogers facility, I was sitting down to get vitals, because we have a team of, you have a psychologist, psychiatrist, for medication, and you have a nurse. So you have a team of people. And I was so angry that I got up and walked out. I said, I'm sorry, I don't want to be here. And that's not my nature. And I walked outside and just stood outside for a moment. And I went back in, obviously kept continuing, but I wasn't mentally applying what they were teaching me. I just said, I'm checking these boxes. I'm, doing the exposure response prevention, starting with my number 1, moving up. Okay, we got to 3 today. And then I go back to the hotel and go back to my safe spots.
Yeah.
Do every ritual again. And I realized that unless I take it upon myself, nobody's going to do it for me. Nobody's able to pull you out of that pit. They can help you, but ultimately you need to be the one to kind of pull up your bootstraps and say, my life needs to improve, and I'm in control of that. So being able to, in my mind, flip that and say, you need to make a change, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be not fun, but it's rather that than living your life in consistent, almost trapped nature. So it was more of a now or never.
Yeah. You had to trust the process.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Trust the process big time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Do you want to highlight or shout out any people in particular who were helpful in that journey? Because like you said, you didn't want to ask for help.
Right.
But help is what we all need help.
Yep.
In varying degrees, but we all need help throughout our entire lives. You want to shout out any of those folks who gave you some help?
Yeah. Dr. Kevin Chapman, he is a psychologist based in Louisville, and he was the first therapist that I saw, and we were family friends and was able to work together with that. And he was someone who's walked alongside of me through the start of it until, even now when I run into him, it's like, can you believe back when, but it's just funny to me that, where that can start. So he was a major part. So shout out to Dr. Chapman. He's a resource in Louisville, Kentucky cards, unpaid, but,
wow.
This is me, unpaid. Unpaid shout out. But he, very knowledgeable, does a lot with sports anxiety. So great for athletes as well.
Nice.
And then another shout out would probably be, just my mom. She, has kind of taken the ministry that was brought through my journey and wanting to share that with other families and be that encouragement and be that resource that she didn't have. And that's what I also am hoping to do with my megaphone, my crown, because I wish I had somebody that I could look at and say, oh, well, she's talking about her story and she's vulnerable about using Lysol wipes on her body for hours and having chemical burns and walking on paper towels. that was something I felt I had to do, but she's open about that, and I shouldn't have to hide it, because the more you hide it, the worse it'll get. And that's where I was. And so shout out to my mom.
Yeah, shout out. And
Yeah.
like you said, the worse you hide, it's the shame that we're hiding.
Right.
We don't want to be seen for that part of us when it is just a part that needs the love just like any other part of us.
Absolutely.
And so I love that you're highlighting that with your platform, with your megaphone. Tell us, like, demystify the Miss America Corporation or organization for us.
Absolutely. So I get to hold the title of Miss Middle Tennessee, and I have the opportunity to compete for Miss Tennessee this summer. And so the Miss America organization specifically is a scholarship organization. So young women can compete for scholarship funds that go towards their future education or their current education. So I, have the ambitions to, if I need to, I have an undergraduate degree, but hopefully look into doing life coaching or maybe more performance. Just being able to have that opportunity is incredible, and to even pay off some student loans. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I still have all of this, it can go towards that as well.
Wow.
But to break that barrier of the stereotype of almost the pageant world, it's not that they're untouchable and they're on a pedestal as title holders, but we are, without this sash and without this crown, I'm still Jana. I just put it on because people listen to me a little bit more. And within that, I get to use that as an opportunity. It truly is. It's the Miss America opportunity, and that's what it is, to learn communication skills. So we, have an interview. We community service based, so mental health advocacy, as we've been discussing, is my platform, and being able to, we have a talent section, so you get to immerse yourself in what you love to do. So when I got out of mental health treatment, I said, I want to sing again. I want to be on stage. And that was finding a piece of myself. And so the talent portion, is a great opportunity to showcase that on a stage. And so it's really a way, within my experience, to become the best version of yourself and to keep chipping away at who you are and how you can further challenge yourself and better yourself and lead other people around you. I get excited talking about it because, it's really it's an honor. Yeah. And I had always wanted to be a title holder ever since I was a young teenager, but didn't get the opportunity until actually I moved here to Tennessee. And I'm so glad, because it's almost like God was saying, you won't be ready until now, because I was able to have this experience that almost humbled me. And not that I was prideful, but it took me down and said, okay, you need to realize that everybody has an issue. So it's like, treat everybody with kindness, always be understanding, realize that you might be the impact in somebody's day that is a changing point.
Wow.
Whether it's a kind word, whether it's a resource, whether it's, just an encouragement on, you're doing a good job, or keep going, because you never know. Yeah. And wow. You never know. You never know what somebody's dealing with, no matter what circumstance you may find them in or what they look like. You never know. Yeah. And so I'm curious if the pressures of the pageant world have increased your anxiety levels or not, and how you manage that. Yeah. So I think, in a way, yes and no. I'll answer yes first. I think it's because when you have a spotlight on you, you are automatically assumed to perform. And within that becomes a tendency to almost want to fake things or hide things or be, almost perfect. But then also that pressure comes off when I realize being my true authentic self and being Jana, not somebody who is beside me or comparing to the past or future Miss Tennessees. It's like, I am myself, and what I bring to the table is my superpower. Yeah. And so to dim that or to hide that would be a disservice to myself and to those around me. So it's like, lean into that, lean into your capabilities, and thank goodness you're different from the person beside you, because they are not impacting the community and those around them in the way that you are. So, there is, I'm not going to lie, there is some times where you feel the pressure, but it's just mentally always checking and being able to identify, okay, am I, being myself? Am I letting this impact me in a negative way with my mental health? Really just being aware of that. No, that's so good. It's such good advice too.
So you mentioned dancing as your talent. You mentioned some singing. Can you tell us about the dancing and how you got into that?
Yeah, so I grew up watching Dancing with the Stars, one of my favorite shows, and I always aspired to learn one day, and I realized I'm not going to be a pro, I'm not going to be a star, I'm not going to be a guest, so might as well find that middle ground. So they approved ballroom dancing for the Miss America organization, meaning you could do it prior, but you weren't allowed to have a partner. But now they've approved it for you can have a partner on you with stage, and with ballroom, that's just essential for the intricacy, the tricks, and to create that partnership which ballroom dancing calls for. And I competed in my first official ballroom dancing competition here in Nashville in January and started learning in October. And then they approved it this past fall. And I thought, well, it's a sign. So it was a challenge, to say, okay, I used to do singing. I've done it for the past eight years on the stage for local competitions. But now we need to kind of switch it up a bit. So I'm so excited to debut ballroom dancing on the Miss Tennessee stage. It's never been done before with a partner. And I also think it opens the door for inclusivity, because girls who didn't think they had a talent who compete in the ballroom dancing world now have a talent. So within even competing at the Nashville Stars ballroom dancing competition, girls knew that I competed, and this was a kind of a dream of mine to do ballroom dancing, and they were like, "Oh, I want to do that too." And I'm like, "Well, you can."
Yeah.
Everybody's different. Your talent's different. Your story's different, but you can absolutely do it. It's everybody has their own touch to it. And as you said earlier, like the way that people respond to things is different. So everything you do is your own. So you own that and you run with it.
So dope. Yes, own it. I cannot wait to hear how well it goes, and that you are paving the way for so many people to now they got a new talent that they can open up and show to the world. Go back though, because you were a former member with Walt Disney.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
So 2019, I was in treatment for mental health diagnoses. 2020, I actually, start of COVID, decided to go in person at Liberty University. And this was a huge step. I always felt I was meant to go there, but stayed back due to my anxiety and fear of change and just, that whole baggage. And went in person in January. March was when the world shut down due to COVID. But I still stayed on campus. We just, isolated Zoom. Most of the campus had already gone home. But after that experience, I was able to get into the Disney College program. And I had tried for 3 years maybe prior to that, because you can only get into it at certain times and it's very competitive. So I was able to get into the Disney College program under the merchandise. So I got to work in all the parks, the castle. I stayed a little bit longer in hopes of getting into entertainment. Wasn't in the cards this time, but I think I'm so thankful I'm here in Tennessee and maybe down the road. But so I was able to work for the mouse and be immersed and create magic for everybody every day. And I loved learning about the company and about just the customer service and just the environment that makes people happy and what creates that business structure and what is successful. So that was also another thing on my list that I wanted to check off and just be able to do. Big Disney fan, so loved being able to do that and create magic.
Oh, that's dope. And I think there are a lot of case studies and books written about the culture that is created there. And so it is magical and it's to be studied. And I'm glad you got that experience.
Well, especially coming out of my heightened OCD season right into that amusement park area. I'm not going to lie, I did carry a sanitizer bottle in my pocket during my shifts because I was working the cash register, which was one of my hierarchies. It was one of my biggest things. So it was also pushing through that and not letting it prohibit me achieving this dream of getting to work for the Walt Disney Company.
Wow.
So that whole experience in itself was very challenging, but so worth it. But it's like you're always going to have these moments where you have to choose to fight it because it's never going to go away. So even in that moment, it was choosing to use those tools. So
yeah. Tell me about the time when COVID hit, because I think that was a heightened sense of awareness around germs and things and hand sanitizer and all of this stuff during that period of time that not everyone, but most people probably experienced. How did that translate for you in that time?
Yeah. So during that time frame when everybody was noticing germs and things being dirty, or not dirty, but just that COVID virus, that's how I felt all the time. I was already Lysol wiping things from the store that came into the home. I was already washing my hands repeatedly, Lysol spraying things, avoiding contact with people. So to me, it felt almost like, oh, hey, guys, this is what I've been doing all along, because I had really been so self-conscious of keeping things sanitary, and then the whole world had gone onto it. So when it was hard to even get Lysol wipes or paper towels and things like that, it kind of forced me to start to do without a little bit, because due to the high demand, you couldn't really get a lot. And being on a college campus, it was also tricky. So, that always is something that individuals like to ask, because it was already like I was living in that world of, oh, things are contaminated, have to be safe and clean. And luckily it didn't push me into a worser spot per se, but it rather just helped me demonstrate a little bit more on what it felt like to have those contamination anxiety triggers.
Wow. Man, I hope we don't ever go back to a time like that, because I think I was probably one that went into overdrive of Lysol.
Yeah, how did that affect you with everything? Because you said 2019.
Yeah.
You had gone through that season.
That's a good question. I think, honestly, it was a period of time that I needed to look inward. And so I had started a business recently in that time frame, and then had these losses and had these heightened triggers from my PTSD, and all I wanted to do was isolate from people. And part of that isolation was the depression, the stay in the bed for 24 hours, those type of things. But then I think just a part of my nature and my desire to find hope in my situation, it was a period of like, let me understand things better. Let me understand myself better. Right. And that's when I started to journal and write, which became my book. I started to look into therapy. And I didn't commit fully to therapy until maybe late 2020, early 2021, where it was grief counseling. And so things were it might have been 2021, because things were probably opening up a little bit more. And I'm starting to understand myself a lot better. And I honestly, because so much of my trauma response was go, work, do all the meetings. Per se. Distractions. Distract myself from all that I'm feeling by producing and working and performing. And that would have probably continued had we not slowed down.
So thank goodness, as horrible as it was, right? That pain into purpose. Thank goodness for that time of, I mean, again, hate that for you, but look what it produced.
Oh my gosh.
Look at where you are now. So
yes.
Wow.
And so
Reggie,
I look
awesome.
back. Yeah, I look back at that time and think, and I'm thankful for the periods in COVID, because I do not think that the world would have the awareness that it has today, or that I personally would have the awareness that I have today without it. And it's you said pain to purpose multiple times, and that became the process in my book, from pain to passion, passion to purpose, purpose to power, power to peace. And I kept reiterating that because it was my process. And getting real, like being vulnerable is being authentic and real about that pain, and sharing that pain when you can with safe people, and opening up to, take the fear from it, and the fear that if someone heard this or knew this about me, that they could use it against me. And it's like, we're all human, and we're all going through this life, and it's hard.
Right. And it's not, that ammunition against you. It's like, you're right. Like that's an area I struggle with. And I will add on to that and saying, it took me a while. I didn't just immediately get out of treatment and hop on that stage and say, hi, I'm Jana. I struggle with OCD, anxiety, and depression. I hid it for a long time, but I slowly started to share, started with my friends, started with, and what I found in that was freedom. So if anybody's listening and you think, oh, I can't just go out to the streets and start sharing my story about my mental health, illnesses, don't worry about it. It's a process. It's slow, and you'll slowly start to feel that strength and that almost empowerment over it, because but it's not going to be overnight. So I always love to let people know that, because it wasn't overnight for me. It definitely took time.
Wasn't overnight for me.
You know, wouldn't right out of treatment, you would not find me in front of a microphone like this. It's just, you know, it's the time. And if you're in the phase at the beginning of that process, that's where also, again, don't give up, because you never know how little by little by little you'll end up doing something big and advocating in a way you never thought possible.
Yes.
So trust the process.
Yes, trust the process. And and like you said, like I didn't just go from not talking about things to being on stages and being in front of microphones.
Right, writing your books, and you had that time.
Like for me, I think back to some of my early forms of vulnerability, and it was writing songs to myself that I never shared with many people, or if anybody. So I'd write these songs, and that would be my expression of vulnerability, because the safest person I knew at that time was me.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, I met a friend, and I met another person who I could divulge a little bit more to and see how they react, see how they respond. Right. And it's safety.
So you were working that muscle. So you were tearing it down to bring it back up.
I was flexing it. Yes. So it took a while. And I tell people, like, vulnerability is going to look different for everybody.
Yeah.
And you're not expected to hop on a podcast or to speak or to write a book about your experience. That's not the goal. It's to be vulnerable in safe spaces enough to heal. Yeah. So that you can then start to connect with yourself and the parts of you that you may not love as much, and then connect with other people, because you're not alone.
And when it comes to sharing your story or advocacy with mental health, sometimes that word sounds intimidating and big. And if you're out there and you're thinking, oh, I want to share and advocate and help others, but I have no idea how. Yeah. Well, what I always say is take a look at your own life and what you are interested in and where you're at in your life and where your interests are, and start there, whether that's sharing or having a little drive to raise awareness or doing small things that can slowly kind of build that community of sharing, because you never know what sharing your story might change. Actually, I don't have it in the binder, but I had a quote printed out, and we had each patient had a little office. So I was in there every day, just had a desk, a cork board. And so I would pin things on there, picture my family, things that I loved to kind of keep me motivated. And it said, one day you'll tell the story of what you overcame, what you're going through now, and it'll become a page in someone else's survival guide. Mm-hmm. And that has been my anthem, my driving force as, overcoming these diagnoses, as well as becoming a title holder and hopefully the next Miss Tennessee and Miss America. You know, it's just, it's being that for somebody else, and keep on going, because you never know who that might be. So it could be a small little thing you do for somebody or a big gesture, and it could be the changing point in their life, because I've had those, and I know you've had those from somebody. So we could be that for somebody else, which is so inspiring and encouraging.
That quote that you just brought up, I pinned it to my Twitter at the time, and I didn't tweet anything. I just had it there so I could go back and reference it right there. And it was pinned to my Twitter for years. And it literally, that's so cool. That's so cool. It got me through some days. Yeah. Like, I'm not going through this for nothing. And like, we're here. Right. We're here. And so that's so dope. You mentioned, like, some of those folks, like, that you've inspired. Have you had any stories where people come up to you and say, just thank you for...
Yeah. And those are to me, I'm like, I get so excited, because I thought, I didn't know anybody was going to watch this. But what I did was a live exposure video. So basically, exposure and response prevention is the golden standard. So with OCD, so you expose yourself to what's causing the anxiety, and you prevent yourself from completing the compulsion. So for me, getting gas at the gas station was a big, big hassle. It gave me a lot of anxiety, touching the handle. Just, I kept in my mind, I think, how many people have touched this? What have they touched after that? And it just was a no-go. And so I had saw Dr. Liz, who I'd mentioned before with the International OCD Foundation, do a live video explaining, okay, this shoe I had stepped and throw up in, and I didn't ever want to wear the shoe again. Well, I'm making myself touch the shoe, like it's clean now. But she said, even with that, I won't touch it. Well, she touched the shoe. She like over immersed herself, which what you're supposed to do to get the highest point of anxiety. So touched it on her face, like just like things that even make a normal person cringe. And so my sister sent it to me, and she goes, you should do something like this. And I was like, you're kidding. I was like, you're scaring me. I was like, I don't think I could. And then I got off of work early and was passing a gas station. I just had this feeling that I should do the video.
Wow.
So I went and said, did a story just explaining OCD and what exposure and response prevention is. And this is me touching I grabbed that nozzle and I like pumped the gas. And then I was like, I feel really dirty. And I touched my face, like my hair, so that I really couldn't clean everything, which sounds silly, but I, rubbed my arms, my phone, the steering wheel. And then the biggest factor was going home and not going into like cleaning mode. So I had to, go home and prevent everything. But I documented that, posted on my story, and I had maybe 20 to 30 Instagram DMs about, I had no idea, I have this as well. Thank you so much for sharing. Can I send this to my cousin who's also been going through something like this? Who do you recommend? Just the smallest questions, but I immediately was like, if only I did this sooner.
Wow.
If only I did this sooner. And the girl who was crying on the floor, thinking her life was over, and that the feelings she had were the only ones in the world was a lie. And that it's just, there's so many people out there who can relate to you, and there is help available, and you can still, move forward and not be trapped by these symptoms and these diagnoses.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's powerful. And I'm sure you're going to continue to help people through your story and through your platform. And I cannot wait to see where it takes you. Before we close out, though, I have another segment, just fill in the blank.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask a couple things and you let me know what comes to mind, as short or as long of an answer you want. Okay. Vulnerability makes me feel blank.
Self-aware. I think that it helps you realize what's truly there versus what the facade is or what you think should be there. Everything is true. Everything's out there.
That's real. My biggest superpower is blank.
Intentionality. I think being able to make sure everybody feels seen and heard, not just with, when you walk into a room with a crown and sash, your presence is seen, but making sure that it's felt so that those who come in contact with you understand the purpose, learn something, feel valued is something that I think I try really hard to accomplish and aspire within my own life as well, because I've been there before where I didn't feel seen or valued, and I don't want anybody to feel that way.
Wow. If I could tell anyone who lives with OCD anything, it would be blank.
Ooh. It would be to ride the wave of uncertainty. And that was something that Dr. Chapman taught me, because when you're in that, almost that wave of anxiety comes over you and you immediately want to react and change something or fix something to make it go away, just ride it out. Just, don't negotiate with it. Don't say, what if I do this? What if I do that? How can I make it better? Just sit with it. Keep going, keep doing your daily things. Just ride that wave of anxiety. And eventually that little voice almost will get quieter and quieter.
Something I'd tell to myself today that I wish I had heard when I was younger is blank.
I would say don't hide what you're going through, because the suffering in silence is what debilitated me the most at the start of my mental health journey. I wanted to seem as though I had my life together, because early college, I didn't have anything like this in my life before. So to me, it felt like, what is happening? Like the sky was falling, like everything was falling apart. And so I, would just lean into that.
Yeah, that's dope. And then lastly, when I need inspiration, I turn to blank.
I turn to listening to other people's stories. I love hearing how someone started in a position and moved forward from that. I love the analogy of a glow stick. You have to break in order to shine. What was that moment for you where you had a moment of success, or turned your life, or no matter what it might be, professionally, mentally. It's just very, very encouraging. So I always look to those for inspiration because it kind of gives you another kickstart to keep trying out whatever you're doing.
Oh, that's dope. This has been great. This has been absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you being here with me. Are there any last words that you want to leave the audience? Any things that you want to promote or share? Go. You got the floor.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be here with you and share your space and to get to share. I would just let everybody know that you can receive help. You're not alone. If you want to contact myself or Reggie, feel free to do so. My emails and my messages are always open, and your pain has purpose.
Yeah. How can people find you?
So I have my personal Instagram account and then also my title holder one. Either one is fine. And then I don't know if we'll post like our emails and things like that for people to
if you want
reach out to. I'd be happy to do that as well. For any contact and things like that if needed.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, Jana, I appreciate you.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
your time. With all the things that you could be doing and all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.